Welcome, everybody. It's time for another one of the fabulous FinCom meetings.
Oh,
And thank you, everybody, for being here. And essentially, this is like Groundhog Day, because the agenda is what it would have been in September, but with a little more urgency, particularly in terms of the capital improvement plan. But nothing so urgent that you can't enjoy a pack of double stuffed Oreos, which are right over there.
He's such a good chairman.
Has everyone had a
You
chance?
guys over with cookies.
So, we'll call the meeting to order, and has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes that were distributed from July 11th?
Yes.
Anybody have any comments on them, other than saying that we ought to approve them?
Did you make the corrections? That was it then.
I move that the
Couple of
minutes be
minor.
approved.
I second.
All right, all those in favor of approving the July 11th minutes? It's unanimous. It's good. We had no transfers, so look how we're flying through this agenda. I'm going to juxtapose the next two things. I think we ought to look at the capital improvement plan because, let me find the schedule. Those of you who've done this before are probably well familiar with the fact that before November 30th, or on or about November 30th, the Finance Committee shall publish in one or more newspapers a general summary of the capital improvement plan. And then within 60 days of receipt of the capital improvement plans, Finance Committee shall prepare and submit a report with its recommendations to the town administrator and the select board. So we have received it, but we have one meeting between now and then to sort of finalize that by having a public
Meeting.
forum to, solicit comment and feedback and then get that report out. So really tonight is our chance to kind of comment on the plan, and if we have questions, I don't know if anyone has gone through it in great detail, but I think you'll find as you do that the big ticket items tend to kind of be in the places where you would expect to find them, with the possible exception of the Keller's Corner revetment, which I have to admit I don't understand from an engineering perspective, but it is
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
talked to Dan, and this has been pushed back a year.
So it's off,
The 400, I think he wants,
450, yep.
he wants 50 to do some sort of engineering or some sort of study.
Yeah, Mark Vincent sent me an email and.
He said he was gonna hook him to them.
Yeah, and the Keller's
It's on
Corner
the second page of the,
Okay, I'm sorry.
is gonna be pushed back 1 year, so it won't be until 2022. And he's asking for 50,000 in 2021 for engineering to get it started. And he's also, changing the roll-off truck at the transfer station, pushing that back a year as well.
So that's the
How
one
much
that's
spot one of those?
215.
I think that's correct.
For
I
which,
bought one of the roll-offs, didn't I?
Yeah, that's number 25 on the first page of the overview of the plan.
Okay.
And
So
that's
that's
being put
gonna-
off to 2022?
Yep.
Okay, so, that's putting an awful lot of stuff in 22.
Correct.
okay,
So
so,
if you'd like, we can kind of go section by section through the plan. You have the summary on pages, looks like 2 and 3. It's after the initial discussion of the various requests. And
Fred, if I can just introduce this to you.
Yeah,
You
please.
said, those of you who have been here before have done this before, so this is new, because the new charter changed how this works. So the charter that was adopted, this is the first time that we've done a capital improvement plan at this time of the year.
oh yeah, no, I meant with the FinCom has weighed in on it.
And and giving your report is somewhat new. What you're gonna do now is you're gonna basically kind of, I guess, and it's really up to you, it's your report, but I think what you'll be doing is you'll be making general comments about what you see in the report, whether you don't necessarily have to approve it or not approve it, but you can say, we think this deserves more research, or, about anything that you have a question about. Because not until you actually vote on your recommendation when it's in the warrant, is that the time when it can no longer change.
Right,
Yeah.
But this could change,
right.
you could say
Which you
certain
would say,
things
so
that you
far, we
wanna
don't
see
see
more
anything
information
of
on.
concern, so far we think we
Yeah, and to,
need more research, yeah.
and to
I
that
got it,
point,
I got it.
as you look out over the 5 years, the chief concern is what's in FY 2021, because that will be on the warrant.
Yes.
Whereas you may look out at 2023 and say, or 2022 as I'm looking at it, and replace engine 95. That will be next year's problem or challenge to say yes to, but it won't be this year's challenge to say yes to.
So, yeah,
So-
you're right. Focus on 2021, because I don't think
Primarily.
going out could change
yeah,
next
that's
year.
I would say, however, and I'll speak to that when we get down to number 20, the elementary school. You may look at that and say, wow, looks like about $350,000 a year on average. What is behind that? And I can speak to that to some degree.
This is-
Some numbers jump out. I
This
guess
is number
the point.
20, the
Yeah.
311?
20 and 21, the two combined, that's a lot.
Okay, so what is that? You want to focus
Well,
on that right now?
why don't we go through the first sections there? Police cruisers, I believe, are on the 5-year replacement.
Except there are two, one, it looks like they're replacing two this year.
Yes.
That doesn't seem normal. Usually it's one a year.
Well, if you look at that, it looks like they have two again in 2025.
Well, okay, so they have two plus the command car. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's the fire, never mind.
What I'm curious, down a little bit, is the police, I know there's a whole big thing with portable radios, and I'm curious if that's different between the police and the fire department?
It is. It's a different system.
Okay.
So what about the police cruisers?
I guess there's every 5 years or every 4 years they have to replace two, so.
Isn't
But that didn't used to be a capital budget thing, they used to have that in their regular budget. And then,
It's the rollover policy.
beg your pardon?
It's the rollover
Yeah.
policy, but no? It's dictating when we're spending for the
Yeah.
police department, yeah.
You're the police liaison. Could you make a note
That's an
to, like,
appropriate comment.
With our new chief.
just check before the November meeting or between now and then, just to find out what those numbers represent?
May I ask a question of Dan?
You also have this back in the detail,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is what schedule they're.
That wasn't my question. My question is, Chief Facet, I assume, is out. And who is the current, do we have a current chief or acting chief?
There is so Chief Facet has vacation time that he's
Yeah.
going to use. His official last day is in February of
Right.
2020. As of November the 1st, Lieutenant Hurley has been appointed as the acting chief.
But is Chief Facet still in town, or are we not gonna?
He was at last night's select board meeting,
Okay.
but
He was at the Oyster Fest.
So from what they told me, that they're using the same, for the cars, they're basically using the same replacement policy as they've been using in
Yeah,
prior
and they've been
years.
very
And that's what it
responsible
looks
about
like.
that.
It looks like Cruiser 1 and Cruiser 5. And
So yeah, every 4 years, it looks like they have to replace two.
I mean, when I did meet, the one thing that they said that they weren't sure of, it was on the radios, and they said that really was dependent on, that the state apparently is making some significant changes in,
Yeah.
we're going digital.
Going digital.
So how many cruisers are there?
think there are 6.
So then there's gotta be, if we're on a 5-year replacement
Maybe it's
term,
5.
then there's gotta be
It
a
may be
couple of
one year
years
they have
where
two, that's
some of them are double. So
Yeah.
this is the year where,
Yeah, well, yeah, you can see that's,
yeah, so that makes,
it comes
that,
around again in 2025, so
so, yeah, so
Yeah. That's fine.
it's the 2 that are up on the same year.
Shellfish Department's looking for a pickup truck. Can I ask a general question? What's the,
Didn't we just get them one?
Didn't they just
Thought we
get
got
one?
one.
they want, they have 2 or 3, they want either replacement or
Do we
she's
know?
looking for another one.
Well, there's probably a detail sheet in the back.
Well, my question is, the harbor master leases a pickup truck, F-250 for $10,000 a year, and then after 4 years, they say, keep it. Is this an option?
Leasing?
Yeah.
In lieu of spending the 36,000 for,
Dan, you familiar with the leasing program that the harbor master has?
yeah, I couldn't say.
I mean, if it gets
How many
that beaten
trucks do
up,
they
leasing,
I thought we just got them and,
We
Yeah.
did.
yeah. She wants a
Last year.
4th one, but, you know, she wants another hire too for, take care of,
Right. The
More
win- the
projects.
winter,
I have a question on the upweller.
I thought we
this
were
keeps
gonna do
coming,
that.
yeah, this keeps coming back, doesn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't work, I don't know where she's gonna plug it in, but she needs electricity. I was involved with an upweller in the harbor, it was in a slip, Buddy Payne owned it. I had some voices in there, and every low tide, on the moon tide, you had to shut it off because it was sucking mud. And hence, all the stuff had to come out, and to survive those big tides, had to go elsewhere. So bottom line was, they don't work in the harbor. Now, she could say it's gonna get dredged, but even the biggest tides, they don't work if they're shut down. Then they give you 24/7. My other question is, or comment, is that we just gave her a $90,000, the department, a $90,000 barge. I would say you're better off maximizing the equipment you have, because it's gonna take another body, you're gonna have to hire somebody else to run the upwell.
The upweller is basically for the growth of spat, correct?
So you buy smaller stuff from the hatchery.
Right, but haven't we heard that, and I don't remember whether it's from you or somewhere else, that we've got a lot of wild spat coming in, and there's
There's
plenty of,
billions this year
there's plenty of
paved.
spat in the harbor, and I mean,
A lot
what
of
the
spat.
hell is an upweller gonna do for us?
I can buy clam seed, and
grow it.
my point is, that if they were selling $100,000 worth of licenses, okay, I'm all for it. You have to justify the need. You can't keep adding bodies to the department and equipment, thinking that there's gonna be 10,000 people showing up to buy a license to support your budget.
And plus, as more and more towns get into the shellfishing, into the,
Yes. It's gonna be more and more
into
competition for
the
welfare.
harvesting game, farming game, it's gonna, there's gonna be more competition for not a hell of a lot more market.
So not to derail
Yeah.
this conversation, which I'm guessing we can't resolve right now anyway.
We could
Right.
move to remove it from the
Well-
CIP.
Well, no,
We
but
can
here-
have,
but
we can
here's
ask
the
Nancy to
question.
come in and
Here's
testify.
the question that I have about this. If you look down the capital improvement plan by department, some of the things, like the police cruisers, are automatic replacements every 5 years. And you just say, well, this has been policy for a long time. Whether you believe it should be every 6 years, 5 years, or 4, this is the policy, and so these cars are due for.
Right.
There's other things like the upweller, which aren't automatic capital items. They have to do with the strategy of the department or their management approach to what they're managing. And it seems to me that regardless of whether we say we think this is a good idea or bad idea, remove or not, this is gonna become a question for the shellfish department when they present their budget to us. since anything we say by the end of November is not binding, right? We can say, well, we have a question about this based on your strategy, right? To your point, maybe we don't think an upweller makes a lot of sense. And in a sense, we would reserve our opinion on whether this is a reasonable capital cost based on, let's hear the whole budget, let's hear the strategy, let's vet that. Where I don't think we're gonna have those kinds of issues with the police cruisers.
Right.
Does that seem reasonable?
So what,
Right.
so what
Because I
exactly
don't wanna
are you
get too
saying?
bogged down with things we
Yeah,
can't,
right,
we
yeah.
can't resolve.
Well,
Right.
let's go through and try to identify those items which we think
But I
are
wanna-
not normal replacement.
Yeah,
Could we just get back to a comment that Bob made about, I think, and I vaguely remember watching this too, I believe she is going to be asking for a new position. It's gonna be somebody who is going to be policing the flats during the winter to make sure that all their debris is cleaned up. So I wanna make sure now that if there is a new position that she's proposing, that it is a warrant article, because according to the charter, any new positions now have to go to town meeting to vote on. And I'm just saying that because I don't want to have what has happened in the past, previous administration, where budgets mysteriously get positions added to them, and then people vote on the budget, and before you know it, we've got an employee that really shouldn't have been there.
and I think that's fair, and,
So-
at least in my mind, it dovetails with what I was just saying, is
Yeah.
that if you have to have a piece of equipment that has to be managed 24/7,
Yeah.
somebody has to manage it. Who is that person? If they don't exist in the department now, there may be a complementary request for a position
Right.
that couples with this piece of capital in order to create some capability that doesn't exist right now. But we don't know that right now.
Right, and for the appropriation for the CIP plan, FY 2021, these amounts are gonna be in what we're gonna vote on town meeting, right? The upweller, like, let's just say,
Yeah, that's-
everything
those
that's,
are the-
everything
Presumably,
20
we will have the
20
option
down.
of saying we don't approve
Right.
by then, and before then, really.
And input on that side, yeah,
Yeah, and then, it's up to the town,
yeah,
Someone will have, to, as with many of these things, somebody's gonna have to make a convincing case for it
one way or another,
to
yeah.
town meeting. And there'll be people who will say no, say that it's, no, you stupid. I never told you that story, but I once saw two old guys arguing in Washington Square Park from a distance, and as I got closer, what they were saying was, no, you stupid, and the other one said, no, you
No,
stupid.
you are.
And that was it, that was the whole conversation.
I know you are. but
Sounds
what
like
am
town
I?
meeting, doesn't it?
Yeah,
You are.
exactly.
What am I? Anyway.
So, since we're not gonna make any recommendations to eliminate any of these from CIP plan today or next meeting, we're just gonna run
Just
through
gonna run
these,
through
right?
it.
Well,
Let's
unless
stick it
somebody
out.
makes a compelling case that it's just ridiculous that it should be in there, then I think we can make a recommendation to remove it. All I'm saying about this, the upweller and the pickup truck, is we need more information,
Yeah,
maybe?
exactly.
Yeah.
So for follow-up, who's taking notes? Who's gonna get that information from the shellfish department?
I would say that would be
Bob Wallace.
Bob Wallace,
Mr. Wallace.
AKA Mr. Shellfish.
There's an upweller sitting on someone's front yard. I'm sure she can get it for nothing.
Oh, it's not mine.
Speaking of getting it for nothing, wasn't the rec department supposed to get a van donated to them?
That's-
Yeah.
Yes,
Let's not
let's
jump
go
ahead,
down
shall
that,
we
yeah.
not?
That was.
All right, so is everybody kind of okay with this year's police?
Yeah.
Okay, on to the fire department. I have to say, to me, it looks sort of modest
Yeah.
by fire department standards.
Yep.
Next year,
They're replacing two
It's less
ambulances.
different story.
But there's an ambulance fund for that,
Exactly.
so that does not panic me.
But I think, as we look through
It's the engine.
as we go through the strategic planning process, we'll be able to vet more closely what the upcoming costs are in 2022 and beyond. But for this year, does anybody have any issues with, right now, I'm not saying this has to be the final word, but as you look at the 5 items that are there, does anything look?
Looks fine.
And I think the chief did a good job of
Yeah.
explaining not only his current budget issues last year, but things that were upcoming, so I don't see
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
He's really responsible.
On to the schools, 20 and 21.
So on the schools, I don't have their request in yet. So what this is when they gave us a 5-year request last year, I just moved it forward a year. So I don't know.
So we don't have the backup
if-
information
Yeah, I
on
don't
this.
know if they're gonna modify their request, so this is just what I know now.
And I'll say too, that from my conversations with them, the stuff that you see in the Nauset Regional School District, I believe is largely associated with the middle school. Because they are in the process of doing this huge capital plan for the high school.
So they're not spending a ton of money on the high school.
There's materials here to review that, and we can talk about that a little bit later, but,
So these figures here, they don't have any purpose, they're just,
well, the
Throw 'em in
elementary
there.
school, I think they represent other stuff, and it's being sort of, I talked to Chief Pauly recently, because what's been kind of floating over their capital, planning is the possibility that the elementary school will need a sprinkler system. And they don't know how to
they don't,
they've got, I think, a $10,000 budget item this year to have a consultant come in and tell them, do they need to have it, when would they need to have it, how much would it really cost, and that sort of thing. So I believe, and don't quote me,
You're on
I
They're
believe,
20 feet from the fire station.
I know, so
Yeah.
I just said, don't quote me, because I'm recalling a conversation that was subjective, but I believe that they are trying to plan for the possibility of a large capital outlay, because the sprinkler system would be big.
Yeah.
It'd be $1 million, whatever the heck it would be. And so I believe they're trying to build an expectation in without knowing what year it would hit in,
Or if it would actually,
or if it would even necessarily hit. Because the 10-year capital improvement plan doesn't have these huge numbers in the first 5 years for the elementary school, unless you start adding in some of these really big deals.
And the school's been there for how long, and there's never been a fire, and it's a brick building, and,
that's 20 feet from the fire station.
and I have just a huge problem with mandates that are, you know,
Unfunded.
that are systemically placing smaller towns in fiscal peril, because it is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and
And
to some,
it's not, I'm just voicing my frustration
No, no, I
at
understand.
mandates that,
But-
that you give away a little bit of our own rule in Wellfleet and the things that are best for our community for something that's mandated by someone who doesn't understand the scope.
Right.
But,
if this were a storage facility for capital equipment, you'd have a whole different emotional argument than if it's a school where little children go, you know, and that's, I'm not saying that it's just about that, but it's certainly partially about the fact that your kids are in that school, you don't want fire.
no,
Yeah.
no, I get that, but I'm saying that there are other things that mitigate the risk that make something mandated from the state ridiculous.
Right.
It's
To
a systemic issue that the towns have to abide by something that the state has requested because some schools should. It's just an overall principle issue,
Right,
sorry.
it's not done with any sort of, it's not done with any sort of specificity,
Yeah, it's
they
a
make a
blanket
general
statement.
rule and it's,
And then
yeah,
there's a bunch of contractors that go, oh, that's gonna be $1 million, let's go
Yeah.
put.
Well, and
You know.
yeah, and I think to that point, there's been a fair amount of vetting about going back at least a year, because I remember having these conversations last year about whether this is even necessary.
Yeah, and
And I gather it is,
that's.
at least that's the current thinking, but that's what they're gonna get an answer to. It's not the only building in town that doesn't have a sprinkler system, it's probably gonna need one too, and, you know, the other shoe will drop. Onto the DPW. I mean, we know the 215,000 is being pushed off.
Right, and the 400.
so
the 215,
is
Being
line
pushed.
item 40, is that also town hall? It's right below town hall railing, downtown, bathroom upgrades, is that also town hall?
Yes,
what's 41? It doesn't have, am I missing? There's nothing-
No, 40,
Oh, I see, okay.
yeah, it's kind of
It's
just a weird
It's a
line.
misprint, got it.
Yeah,
Just write something
like-
in there.
No, it's the one above, DPW
No, I
train
know,
station.
just write your own.
Well,
Stephen, right
before
when
we
you
jump
want,
over there, the
there's a little
backhoe
extra.
04 isn't, I assume that's the date of its acquisition,
That,
04.
that's the year of the.
So we have
so
a
it's
15-year-old backhoe that needs to be replaced.
Yep.
The 180,000 represents what exactly?
That's a new storage building they wanna build at the transfer station.
Store what?
Cause a lot of their equipment is stored outside in the weather.
Oh.
It would increase the
Longevity.
That's the word I'm looking for, yes, thank you.
Is any of that equipment on a regular replacement schedule?
No.
So for instance,
It all should
if this.
No, I don't think any of the DPW equipment is.
Okay, so my question would have been at that point is if there is gonna be $180,000 to protect the equipment, we should probably at that same point review the, not us, but somebody
Would they-
should
would they
review
protect
the replacement schedule because if
Rollover
you're,
policy.
yeah, if you're,
We don't have a rollover policy for DPW?
We do, but not everything is a vehicle.
Oh, okay.
Um,
But
so I
it's
would just say
equipment is
the
being
180
stored.
would be, the 180 could be absorbed by keeping the equipment longer than
Right.
previously had,
Well,
so.
180 sounds like a prefab metal building on,
Now,
with concrete.
Yeah.
Does this building, one of the things that I had heard was with regard to the whole sewer and needing potentially to have a sewer processing site, and the desire was to put it at the transfer station, but then others are saying that there's other plans at the transfer station. Is that
I
related?
didn't hear anything about that.
I think that's just a rumor.
Well, there's not a rumor that the one place that you could put a sewage processing,
Treatment place.
that's about the
Is it
only place in
DPW?
town that would make any sense whatsoever. Yeah. Whether we have to build one or not, I don't know, but it's looking more and more like.
So what would that have to do with the
I was
building?
just curious, what that, then, what is the space issue, I guess, that's
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
at the transfer station?
That's a good question, is if there's going to be future, if we have to accommodate future structures or things at the, or in and around the transfer station, is there an overall plan for the space?
The concern I have is that there's no other identifiable place anywhere in town that we could put a sewage processing plant that I can think of, that, where you have where the effluent going to go out to the Herring River and so forth, I don't know.
So on the assumption that, that's another question for a different venue,
I'd say
I mean, I
the
have no idea if $180,000 is a reasonable amount for the size building they are talking about putting up. For what equipment, we don't know exactly. But should we assume that it sort of is?
I
Or
would trust
do we
Mark's
need to?
estimate, and it does make sense, because why go to these vehicle rollover things, getting new equipment and have it
And have it sit
sit
out.
outside in the elements? I
Yep.
mean, it's preventative maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And then, I mean,
Could we just sort of get a generic answer then, maybe to, is there leftover space? Are they cramming things into this building? How has this been spec'd out in terms of size for the cost? So that once they build it, you don't want to have two other pieces of equipment sitting outside because they didn't plan the building size
will
right.
it accommodate everything, is what you're
So,
saying?
yeah, so if we could just ask, say, have you done that? You know, have you kind of done an assessment of what you're gonna be storing in there, and is it inclusive of future needs and that sort of thing, just so that, this doesn't bite them. I mean, bite the town, bite us, but, mostly this should serve their purposes, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully for quite a long time.
I'll get back to you.
Okay.
I mean, obviously the big number with them is those last ones, right? The Lieutenant Island, Keller's Corner, and that.
Where's that?
On that
It's the
stage.
next paper, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, turning to page 2, I assume there's nothing else
Oh,
on
okay.
the DPW that anybody has a huge
Yeah, I
issue
got
with?
a question.
Okay.
One of their items, now granted, it's not a huge number, but they're proposing a remotely operated mechanical entry gate to increase efficiency. They open this thing once a day, 5 days a week.
Where's
They
this, at
close
the
it once
transfer
a day.
station?
Yeah, and they're specifying on the backup information, which is
They
way
just,
back.
they want a garage door opener? Is
They,
that-
they, no, they want a
This is
remote, they want an automatic remotely operated, I don't.
This is item 44, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and I do not see any reason to have a remotely operated entry gate. Replacement, I'm fine with if they need to replace it, but,
I'm with
why
you.
is it, why do they need a remote gate when they're only open it once a day?
It's only 5 days a week.
Yeah, exactly. It opens 5 times and closes 5 times, except if you're for 2.5 months or 3 months when it opens 7 times.
No, I questioned that,
Yeah.
and, no, when they go in and, I don't know where the gate is, but when they go in and out,
It's the gate to the transfer
they have to literally get out of the truck and open the gate and get back in the truck.
Big effing deal.
And that's what I said.
Yeah, sorry.
You know, if you compare where they're able to be right now, the building they're in, to what they were in like 3 or 4
Yes.
years
Yeah.
ago.
Oh my
I mean,
God, yes.
if they can get out and they can walk, they can,
But
They can use
Get
the
out and walk
exercise.
I did question that too.
Yeah.
So does this rise to the level of our suggesting that it be removed?
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
You gotta draw the line somewhere.
I don't know if I have to have a formal vote on this, but it feels like.
Well, I think
Feel like we do.
we
We
should
do.
possibly, I mean, the best case scenario is we have Mark in and we ask him about this and he decides maybe they can get out and open the gate.
I'm not sure I understand the whole process right now. So we're looking at this, we can object.
We can request the department head to come in and talk to us about things.
Everything that, as I understand it, everything that is new capital is gonna end up on the warrant, one way or the other.
And they'll come in here, I presume.
And we will be, between now and then, we will talk to all the department heads, and we can ask a very specific question, have them justify it or not,
This is the
and
question.
So the main thing is, yeah, I think it's.
And it doesn't even say to replace because the existing is in bad condition. This is simply they want a remote operator,
so this is something we will burrow down on.
which by the
when time
way,
comes.
has much
Right,
more
we-
possibility of needing repair than.
Then, yeah, and what if the.
Keep in mind our recommendations are due by the end of November.
Correct.
Yeah, but
So-
we're not voting on them.
And what's the guard check?
We're
It was really
making
for
recommendations.
58,000. Just
I was
above
just
that.
getting that.
So Dan, in terms of those recommendations that are due at the end of November, if we have significant questions about something, we can note that, can we not?
Yes.
Without saying we totally don't approve of it, we can say, no, we have questions that are pending.
However you want to word it, you can say we're not ready to endorse this until there's further explanation as to the need or
Okay.
something like that.
Does that satisfy the general feel
Yeah.
that,
Yeah,
That's
Sure.
I mean, this is,
okay, so
this
they,
is a very preliminary, drive-through here.
so they're also proposing relocating the guard shack, or like putting a new guard shack at a different site, and I don't know.
Guard check? Where's that?
Yeah, it's the one that's at the entrance, like,
Oh, the,
so why would
Where
they
the
be moving it
scale
away
is?
from where everybody has to drive by and away from the scale, or is this an
I
additional
think
guard
it's an
shack?
additional, because it's higher and they can
an eye on
supervise what is going on.
So they're gonna have
chair?
a person at the guard shack that's there already, and then another
yeah.
person, does that mean we have to hire somebody?
now that the,
another one.
now that the beach department has metal chairs, what happened to the old
Yeah.
guard chairs?
They were still
Just
using them.
Give them to the DPW. They
Some of
can
them, I think
sit up
some of them might be on the top of the dune, to assist in shark
Don't
watch.
Don't worry about it.
But anyway,
Alrighty, on we
This was
go.
irony.
so does this, I don't understand whether, I mean, if they're putting an additional guard shack in, that speaks to additional personnel as far as I'm concerned.
So
One
what
active
is
thing,
the,
sometimes you get a long queue while somebody is waiting to
Now,
come
they
in.
want,
but
they
this is-
want,
what
it
is
says
the
right here, they wanna
precipitous
be able, they wanna have a high lookout,
Right.
so they
Put a
can like
camera up.
survey the whole thing,
put a
yeah.
stick a camera up on the top of the pole and put a remote thing,
The
it's,
GoPro.
you know.
On the guard shack, yeah.
I mean, that's not a, I mean, if the precipitous of this is, you need to view, then you can just stick a pole up in the air
What-
with
yeah,
a
what is it
Arlo
they
on
do?
it and twist it around.
They've got
It's $100.
3 or 4 people running around there anyway, plus somebody sitting in the shack most of the time. This just says to me somebody's gonna be sitting on their ass in the shack instead of helping people.
Yeah, I think there's a cheaper way to figure that, but I wonder what the precipitous is for needing a
Yeah.
shark.
Like, do they have so much difficulty
Dump
keeping an eye
sharks.
on the transfer station that they need a high lookout?
So now we have 2 questions.
For DPW, yes, we
So
do.
before we do this page, the storage vault shelving for the next 3 years, 5750, 5,000, and 5,000. Is this made out of gold or, I mean, that seems pretty
What
excessive.
line
On the
item is that?
Second, at the top of the page, first page,
Clerk,
general government.
storage vault,
Oh,
shelving.
I said that's for record storage, Dan, is that correct?
Yes.
It's record storage, we're running out of room.
Yeah, it just, I mean,
That's a lot of shelving.
that's a lot of,
How much
that's a lot of
shelving
money
is that,
for,
Dan?
who scrutinizes the numbers?
Dan, do you know how much shelving that is?
No, I don't.
Okay,
So this is for our town records that we have to keep on.
yeah, we have to keep them, we gotta keep them
I
on
mean, was there a
someplace.
second bid?
And the storage
I'm
facilities in
wondering
the
if this is
basement
maybe
of
like
town
a
hall?
wholesale replacement of whatever existing shelving we have, where they're bringing in a whole new unit or something.
Dan, can you get us some additional information on that?
Mhm.
Thank you. I was replacing the shelving in the upper vault when needed, as well as adding a shelving unit in the basement storage area. But then there's a recurring $5,000 for the next 2 fiscal years. That's a lot of shelving.
That's a lot of shelving. I'll
Yeah.
take that in my basement.
All right,
Yeah, okay.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
No, no, it's a good
Thanks,
one.
Bob.
On to page 2, the $450,000 is not there anymore. 50,000 is.
Yep, for engineering.
But it's under Duck Creek.
Keller's Corner is where?
The big corner
Yeah.
on Kendrick Ave.
It's where the dock used to be to go out to the Chesapeake Bay.
Got it.
This is one of those issues, as I understand it.
I didn't know where it
that we're-
was.
We're
That's
going
why.
to, we're going to be confronting stuff
I
like
see,
this
I know where, yeah.
on an almost annual basis, because it's about proximity to the water. It's about
Yeah.
proximity to storm surge, to rising water, to extreme high tides and whatever, and the gradual erosion of things that are right on the water. And the question of what, do they get replaced, do they get moved? Is it the town's responsibility? There's all kinds of variations of the question around that, but this particular one looks real vulnerable. And
Yeah, they dump sand there, I think almost nowadays twice a year, but, you know, like this past week, the tides were right up to
Really
the very
high.
top.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's gonna be the case in many places that abut water in this town going forward forever.
They also had,
These are
they
not-
also have a problem, I guess, with the storm drain coming out.
Coming down.
These are not small costs. If you start adding them up, times 5, times 10, suddenly you're looking,
Yeah, you
as
can see what
Everett
they're.
Dirksen said, you're talking about real money at some point.
In the
There's
20
so much
years that
real
I've been
money
here,
coming
there's
out of it,
never
but
been
it
any
wouldn't stay.
project.
Well,
That you can
That's-
see where
that's
they're,
been-
where
sand
they're
migrates
piecing, you know,
down
they're
and gets to
piecing
the
it
pier,
together.
and then they take a little bobcat,
They-
take it from under the pier,
Yeah,
put it in a dump truck and dump it on Keller's Corner.
that's really
That's a soft
clear in
solution.
that.
And I-
They
So
look,
it's that's the recycling that just happens all the.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, it's
it
really,
moves
it's
that- it
very
moves
clear in
that-
that picture.
That
Thanks, Linda,
direction,
for
and just put it
Googling.
back where it came from.
Didn't know where it was.
It's
I have
a, it's a soft solution.
To me, in some ways, this is kind of where the rubber meets the road for the FinCom. We are an advisory board, so we don't
Because they
make
wouldn't have been
these
able to turn.
operational decisions. But there should be a little voice in the back of our heads about these kinds of expenses, because some of them just happen automatically. You know, well, we need to do this, we need to do that, and maybe they don't get weighed against the inevitability of change. You know, the inevitability that this town is constantly eroding in certain places. And to me, it's a question to some degree of where does Wellfleet's responsibility begin and end in terms of incursions by nature, you know, against the town, in effect. You were mentioning, for example, sewer before. There's sewer plans that are this big, and there's sewer plans that are that big, and they're contingent on other things. But this big could be $20 million, and this could be $150 million, and it's way above my pay grade to figure out what
The saddest thing-
conditions are going to determine which one we need.
I'm talking to Kurt, the saddest thing is he was saying, even if we put in a full sewer system in the entire town, put all the pipes in and all of
Yeah.
it, we still wouldn't meet the requirements. Because most of the nitrogen is not coming from our septic systems.
So there are those, and some of these things are dictated by the state. For example, at some point, the sprinkler system questions will be resolved not by our police or our fire chief, they'll be resolved by someone else saying these are the regulations. So if 50,000 seems like a reasonable number for evaluating
Okay, but
Mr.
the
Ventnor.
50,000 says Duck Creek revetment.
480,000, wasn't it?
So
Oh,
line,
yeah, 50,
line 59,
59,
we're moving the 450 to
Okay.
FY '22
So
and
to the
replacing it
50,
with 50
right, for
Okay.
and
engineering.
21 for engineering.
Yeah,
So a
there are,
full 450 in 2022,
The 450 moves from 2021 to 2022.
and this becomes a $50,000
And
dollar
engineering.
50K.
engineering.
right.
Okay.
Right, I mean, that's
But I think Duck Creek is the
That's
road
reasonable.
over from the Pearl.
Right.
I attended this morning when you came to the office, I was at a meeting at the Center for Coastal Studies where the 4 Outer Cape communities are talking about coastal resiliency and how do we address it, because it affects all of us. And interestingly, what the Mark Borelli said during the start of the meeting is that nor'easter that we just had, the storm surge from that was a foot higher than the storm surge we had in that big storm that flooded everything in January. But it happened at low tide, so we didn't see it. But the storm surge was actually bigger in that storm.
That's frightening.
Yeah, so it was an eye opener because it's like, okay, that was just luck.
Yeah.
It happened when it did.
So 50,000 seems reasonable, and it's something that's gonna have to be addressed.
Yep.
And whether you
We
know,
need to engineer it.
And I
so-
still have that from last year, that emergency plan that I have gotten into a little bit, but not as much as I should have. But that's the overall picture of risk evaluation for things like this in the town, and I think since that's been done, from what I read, there are a lot of other risks that have
Yeah, there's a new
cracked
committee
out,
now
so there
that's
should,
working.
that should be.
And I guess I would hope that if we're gonna spend $100,000 on engineering, that some of that is leverageable for other,
Yeah,
that it's gonna have some general principles attached to it that will help us evaluate future issues.
yeah.
And
It's
that
one of
this
those-
isn't just like, well, it only applies to Keller's Corner, it only applies to Duck Creek.
Yeah,
Right.
but when you're looking at, when you come down near, near the general store, Blackfish, right
Yeah.
there, I mean, that's it was a concern. I think that was, how old was that plan? 6, 7, maybe 10 years ago? And that plan, that right there was a particular concern, and where we have to evacuate to the middle school, I think that's gonna be something that should be in the strategic look for how are we gonna evacuate to the middle school if that is an area of concern.
but
just throwing that out,
expenditures
just while
here
we're
to
in there.
take care of immediate
Should-
needs.
yeah.
Colors
Yeah,
Corner
no, I know,
definitely
just-
needs
but
to be
that's a
fixed.
bigger-
Duck Creek revetment needs to
I'm
be
also, I've been liaison, and meeting also going to the energy, and they now call it the Energy and Climate Change Committee, or something like that.
Right.
And, but what's really great, I don't know if there's any impact on this part yet, but I've got 2 new women are on that committee who are really dedicating themselves to doing some grant writing.
Oh, good.
And,
Right.
so I just read something about an MVP grant or something like that, so. And that's what we need for this stuff, is looking at what the various grants are, and, so.
So, do we know anything about the Lieutenant Island Road improvements? This is, I assume, been all
Yeah, you know that.
scoped out at this point? I mean, what is that?
I remember, we talked about that last year, I thought.
It's always on there, cause these turn
Because
to,
they need
Trying
to,
to do a little bit each year.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Cause the whole road and the bridge needs to be fixed.
But can you read this as saying if it's fixed in 2021, it's good to go until 2026? Since there's no follow-up
well, it looks
costs
like
associated
they,
with it?
that looks like it's a
So
5-year
they're using both this
plan.
money and chapter 90 money
Yeah.
that they had set aside for the Lieutenant Island.
So drainage
Road work.
/ roadway improvements to
So
the
$30,000 a
Road.
year for.
So this is the road leading to or from the bridge.
Right, the one they couldn't get through when they had the fire and, yeah.
Which, this isn't gonna fix that problem.
No,
Still
no,
not gonna be able
I
to get there at high tide.
just have generic questions when I see big numbers like 150,000, just wondering how they were derived. What does that actually include and what does it not include? That's the whole point, right? So, anyway, Somebody had something to say about the rec department.
Yeah, I thought they got a
Weren't they getting that
donation.
van donated?
Or,
Weren't they supposed to get a van donated?
Yes.
What happened to
Well,
that?
Actually-
because of the possible repair and liability of the,
Right, so now they
That
want
was
to
our-
buy, now they
that
want to
was our
spend $33,000 to buy one.
So, the conversation from last year was Department of Public Works looked at the van and said, this is barely workable.
This is what we told them.
That's
Yeah,
what we
this is
said.
what we
That's
said.
what we said.
And the concept was, okay, they're gonna use it for a year and see how it works.
Yeah.
And then come back and ask for a new one.
Yeah.
If they like it.
Which we knew was gonna happen.
I think everybody knew that. And that's where we're at right now.
So did they actually use the thing or no?
Yes, yeah.
And everybody was all thrilled about it?
From what I hear, yes.
Of course they
What
were.
was it used for?
For bringing kids to various recreation events, so if our kids are playing in an event that's in Eastham, to be able to take them to that event.
I'd like to see statistics.
You know, when I was
On that
when I
van.
was a mom, we used to get other moms to do that if we didn't have a mom.
I
So
would-
we would get like one mom that was
Yeah.
able to go,
What
or
about
dads, and dads,
There's a
because
word
most
for
in my
that.
case,
It's
most of dads.
It's called carpool.
And they all got together and picked the kids up and dropped them off and took them.
Yeah.
I thought though that there was a bunch of stuff here as well, wasn't there?
I would like to
For
see
the,
how many times that van was used and how many kids were on it each time.
Oh, I think I'm the
who was driving
liaison.
Yeah.
Who was driving it?
And I'm
Because
gonna
I will
bet
tell
that
you, the
there are no
liability,
statistics.
well, Steven is
I'll-
gonna take that.
I'll ask Suzanne
the liability on
statistics.
that, it just freaks me out. If we have to,
Am I, was there something like that about here with the, at the COA, or is that something that's different?
Well, here's something to throw into this as well. Tom Conrad made a comment about, remember when I raised the stink about the big old buses?
Yeah.
Kids, 3 kids rattling
Yeah,
around?
yeah.
He
Like
did,
yesterday.
he did point out a nice little kind of alternative. If towns would have their own combination rec department bus that could also pick the kids up and take them to school.
school, yeah.
So kind of like a
You mean like the old
cross,
station wagons with the school bus sign?
the special bus, the smaller
short
one,
bus.
the short bus.
So,
That is so
I
derogatory.
guess, well, what I'm hearing is, we'd like a little more detail
Details.
about the
We'd like-
justification for a 15-passenger van, how often it's gonna be used.
For 180
I'd
days,
like to
let's-
know- I'd like to
180
know-
days of school,
What
for how
the
many
usage
kids?
was like
Recreation.
on the van, if they did spend a year with the old van, if they went through a fiscal year with the old van, I wanna see how much it was
Yeah.
used.
I'll
Now, on the
ask,
bandstand awning, I have no idea if that's a reason
She
for it.
brought that up last year.
wasn't it
was-
originally quoted at like 40,000 and then they came back?
No, I
and
think
people
I
were questioning it.
this was, I think that was the tent that got
I
replaced
think that
by
should
a.
be a fundraiser.
Right.
I think
Yeah,
I think that should be a fundraiser.
Or-
and
Ask the
Friends of
gentleman
the
who
COA.
donated it
That
in
was
honor
your
of his
thing, Jeff.
wife, if he'd like
Let's
to
do a
replace
fundraiser
it.
for the, I
agree.
believe Turo did a fundraiser for their beach chairs.
Wouldn't
Fred?
somebody,
If
wouldn't
I'm not
somebody like to
mistaken.
put their name on that bandstand awning and donate
Yeah.
it?
The
Why
guy
are the
who donated,
Bakersfield
his name is on it.
backstops under
Well, maybe
DPW
somebody-
and not under RAC?
Even if he doesn't wanna do the new
Yeah,
awning,
I
maybe
saw
somebody
that
else would
too.
like to add their name and do.
Because they're gonna
Do we have
donate.
one talking at a time, please? Linda asked a question.
Oh, no, I like to multitask.
Bakerfield backstops, I don't even know what that,
It's for the-
46.
Sounds like the baseball field,
behind home plate, because.
Why isn't that under RAC?
because apparently
Because-
the DPW
The
maintains
The
it.
DPW maintains it. 35,000.
it's seriously to like stop balls from going,
Yeah, it's made out of
Yeah, it's plywood.
wire.
Is it
Oh,
was
that's-
plywood when I
that
was.
is quite a lot. Excuse me?
The hell?
Hello,
We must
Mota.
have said something that woke Siri up. Go back to sleep.
She never sleeps.
No, apparently not.
You know, I
So-
know, she's probably recording us all.
Yeah,
right now.
We need an explanation on that one.
Yeah, I guess we do.
$35,000 a number.
All right.
Does it say when the last ones were,
Well, I'm sure when you get the information from Mark
Okay,
Vinson, he'll let us
so
know, because probably
this
it's
is for-
been a while.
the following fiscal year, 2022? A 10-station group fitness thing to go into Bakersfield for adult fitness.
Where's
Yeah, they have
that?
those like at the seashore,
Oh, okay.
one of those, you go to this station, then you go to that station.
Oh, like the
That's what I
little,
think
you
they're
do
talking
one
about.
thing
Like
and
a
then you go to the
circuit
next
board,
one.
like
Yeah,
a
that's what
circuit.
it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just as soon not get bogged down on that right now.
Let's focus
Yeah.
on,
Adult
the current
fitness stations
fiscal
are common
year.
at modern playgrounds for children.
I don't know
So,
if there's a burning need.
Yeah.
so there's I'm hearing at least a nascent general sense that maybe the awning could be done as a fundraiser.
Uh-huh,
We need questions about the 15-passenger van.
uh-huh.
mhm,
We would love more detail about the Lieutenant Island Road improvements.
yeah,
There are questions about the Bakerfield backstops in terms of their cost.
yeah.
The guard shack and entry gate, the generic feeling is, so we need more information
And
about,
also the gate.
about that, right? Yeah, the guard shack and the gate,
The
43,
prison-
I
44.
don't know, honestly, about the gate thing, me personally, I wouldn't support it, so I don't really feel like, I mean, sure, we can have them come and talk about it, but why talk about it?
I can't
I mean,
do
if
first
we're gonna
up on
have
top
him
of
in
the
to talk
shop
about
without
some things, we
the
might as well.
But I think, I
Give
guess.
me a heads up
planning,
about-
he was planning on coming today, as a matter of fact.
I guess what I'm hearing is that we're not inclined to love those two line items. Number 3 and 4, the upweller and the pickup truck.
Can I just point out we didn't get to the beach department?
We're going to.
Yeah, the portable repeaters.
But
and
I'm just doing a quick review here because that's the last item
Okay.
that we have to like talk about at this point.
We've got the, right, you got the pickup truck and the upwell
We're
as
not gonna
well.
really know about 3 and 4 until we've had a chance to talk to the shellfish people. So there's
Okay.
certainly a big question mark hanging out over that. And we didn't touch general MIS equipment. Is that a standard 50,000 a year, number one?
Yeah, that's in
Okay.
their explanations.
Always. All right, so now on to number 65, portable repeaters.
Yeah, now I don't question the need for those, but I would like a little bit more information about how many units that is.
Okay, I'll get that.
What exactly, you know, where they're gonna be.
What, these are for.
These are to
communications?
enhance the ability for the lifeguards at the beaches to talk to the fire.
Those are the
and police.
walkie-talkies, right? Yeah, they're
These
the
are
old
repeaters for
analog,
the
yeah, they're the
walkie-talkie
old
system.
analog, yeah.
Sort of like a repeater for a router, but this is communications, so, no, I
So,
get,
yeah.
I get the need for it.
Yep, so longevity.
But I just
So-
wanna, I would like a little bit more information.
Like what? What
It
should I
also
ask
sounds
you?
like it would be good to know how they are coordinated then with the equipment at the fire department and
Right, which are both
and
different.
related equipment
How
there.
much, what would it take to just have the, like a Verizon go and put a cell tower near all of these?
No idea.
Don't forget it, you know
Well,
how many people would object
I mean,
to
I wanna know
cemetery?
if this is
On the
like
seashore,
four
even though it makes sense,
$10,000
I'm with you,
units.
but
I just want to see what it is
Right.
she's priced out. for
That's
this.
good, I mean, we have 30 acres up there, the whole thing was, they don't put, the park doesn't allow any cell towers. But we have 30 acres at Whitecrest.
We own 30 acres
Right.
at Whitecrest. We could
Why
put,
couldn't-
we could have a cell tower put there.
So Stephen, you'll ask that question?
And then,
I've got the rec department statistics on usage for that van, and then I've got the portable repeaters,
Yeah,
just
details.
some additional information.
That's it.
And she's got a 2022 line item. We could ask her about
What?
the,
Modular building.
she wants to relocate, I guess she doesn't feel like there's enough space to share with the shellfish department, but that,
It's
the
a
van.
good point,
yeah, but she wants to relocate it to Lawrence Road,
by,
Then why don't you,
which is a terrible idea.
Can you sell stickers?
Yeah,
Again, this is not a 2021
I know, I
issue.
know.
And as much as we may look out over the
Well-
next 4 or 5 years,
That's $250,000.
yes, it is. And there's some
Right,
other
but
real
it's-
big items out there as well.
that, that could change.
You can certainly ask the question, but the focus should be on
No,
2021.
I kind of agree with her in, with Suzanne's concept of removing it from down by the pier. It would alleviate a lot of congestion, it's just where
I don't know, you know how
put
much
it.
has gone down now that they've made it so easy to order it?
Yeah,
I
too
mean,
easy, so we just
The
did
numbers were
everything-
way, way
We just
down.
did everything online and made it easier for people to gather that.
Right, but
get-
you
to get
also
those
have the
before then.
shellfish department that really wants a larger space. So,
Yeah, but, so I'm just questioning if we're trying to alleviate the congestion by making it easier for people to not have to physically be there and order their stickers online, then why do we all of a sudden need a $250,000 building to
well, you need to
house the
relocate
stickers?
it somewhere.
For
other than
for
down
use
the
for,
harbor.
3 months of the
3
year.
months.
I guess, and maybe this is a question for you, Dan, some of these costs as they apply to new structures seem to me to fall more generally under the umbrella of town planning. You know, we need a building here, we need a building there, we need storage there, we need to put new shelving up in that building. But there is no sort of comprehensive plan at this point that says, here's the future needs of the town in terms of space. So each department is coming in with its own requests.
I would say that's correct.
How do we
Well, the
How do
building
we
needs, doesn't the building
make a
needs
fair
to,
evaluation
It's
of,
very-
yeah, this makes sense, that makes sense, that makes
But the
sense,
building needs
without knowing.
they have a
committee,
plan.
So just, ask a question, hold on. How are we to evaluate whether $250,000 in 2022 is a reasonable amount to spend on a modular building?
that we then have to maintain.
That's actually a question.
Well,
And the
I
time
think
tank has
what
to
you
be
need to have,
packed.
we've been looking for a way to put the beach sticker sales somewhere else. You know, the parking task force is looking at parking congestion down at the pier, and it's like, okay, well, one thing you could do right off the bat is take away the beach sticker sales, you take away the cars for that.
May I ask? Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
So we were looking for a place where can we do this? And so Suzanne came up with this idea of this would free up parking down at the marina, would also give the shellfish department the space that they need in that building.
Which is good.
I was hoping that, you know, I could find the space, maybe the school had a, you know, extra space that could handle it.
I was just gonna say the
School
school,
is-
because you're not using school when you're
Well,
using
they-
the beach
Yeah.
sticker, so yeah, something
They do
that's a
open in
multi-purpose.
June, but yeah, maybe you could.
So we'll continue to look for a
Yeah,
space
'cause
that we could,
off the top of my head, that's
Sure.
exactly
Yeah.
where, instead of having another building to maintain
Right.
and to take, yeah.
Okay, so that's
Alternately,
2022.
Yeah.
What about renting a modular building, like rent an office trailer for 3 months?
we'll look into that.
Which
And
we
put
then
it
don't
where
need
the
to
police
maintain.
station
That's what the police
I thought-
department station was.
Yeah, I heard
Then
that
we don't
that
need
was
to
one
maintain
idea
it.
already.
So when you see something that's like in 2022, the department is basically saying, have this on your radar,
Right.
this is what I would like to do.
Yeah.
I'm sure she has not completely
Okay.
priced out, you know.
Yeah, this reads more like a concept than it does an actual,
I would say yes,
okay,
yeah.
Then I won't sweat it, but we.
good.
But the, using the
is-
school is a great
Yeah,
idea.
because your
Yeah.
school's not, you know, yeah, you have all this
It's
vacant
there.
space.
Before we leave this, yeah, I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
You're talking about building a building to house equipment for, what was it, $250,000?
No, 180.
180.
180.
You have the fire department in South Wellfleet, which only has vehicles in it. I think it's DPWs, I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Well, except
Build a
that the
big-
stuff
bigger
at the
building.
transfer station may
Be able
need
to take
be
those
at
out of
the
there,
transfer
give that to
station.
the shellfish department. And then you'll have,
This will be in South Wellfleet.
yeah, it's the center.
I think
of-
the issue with the one in South Wellfleet is one time we wanted to do that, and then the residents got upset because their insurance went up because they're not that close to a fire department facility.
Even though.
It's only fire.
Even though it's
only-
not-
there's nothing
it
on it,
is-
because it
fire department.
says fire
Right,
department
because,
on it.
so,
Also, there isn't good access and egress from that for cars. We'd have to redesign.
And that's
there's
adding
not
more
enough parking
traffic
for a
to
beach
the-
sticker office.
You just go
On
do a
Route
I'm saying
drive-through.
put the
Just do a
shellfish
drive-through.
department down there.
That's what, yeah,
in the South Wellfleet
Yeah,
Fire.
I'm saying
that's-
there
you
isn't
talked about
enough
that last
parking and access, I think.
What does
down
Shellfish
there.
need parking? for?
Right now, they have an office that's 12 feet
Oh, you're saying
by,
the shellfish department, I'm sorry, I was
Right.
thinking the beach.
But why would you
department.
put the
Never mind.
shellfish department on Route 6? They really kinda need to be down by the
well, they
water.
can
They
have
got-
a
they got a ton
miniature
of
office
trucks.
down there, but
Oh,
it's a
okay.
center of going to Lieutenant's Island and going to.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because I gotta think of one.
They
I
have,
don't know, but it's on 2022 and it's a
So there-
little after 8 right now.
Yeah, so there's
could
a
we
lot
just
of- lot
move
of-
on?
all right, I'm just
Great ideas.
throwing it
get
out
pushed.
there, think through the problem. as we
Are
say.
there any 2021 issues that we haven't already
I
addressed?
don't think we've done
I
it.
think
That,
we've got them.
it feels to me like we got them. I'm gonna write up what our concerns are. So at the next meeting, we'll have a report. If you have specific concerns or if you get new information that we've addressed already, please send it to me. And we'll get that together, and then we will have done our duties. Again, remember, we don't have to be right at this point. Which gets us to the next item on the agenda.
Which is,
Calendar, planning for, so last year, we met on December 19th, we met on January 19th, 23rd, and 30th, we met on February 13th, 20th, and 27th, we met on March 6th, and then, of course, town meeting was April 22nd.
right,
People have expressed a general sense that that worked pretty well, meeting that often. It is also a little bit later than, in terms of hearing and making decisions about individual budgets, a little later than what we had done the year before. And I'd like to sort of dovetail this conversation about our scheduling for the coming 4 or 5 months with, and this is a lesser thing, I think, Board of Selectmen would like to have a joint meeting with us at some point. I ran into Janet about 3 weeks ago and suggested to her that they had wanted December 6th. I said, that seems a little early for us, because what are we gonna talk about, basically? So I would push for us to have it later,
I agree with you. Actually,
maybe early March even.
last year worked out fine.
It worked
After
out
we're
really
done with our
well.
budget.
We
then
had
have a
the
joint
answers they
meeting.
needed.
But we didn't have a joint meeting with them last year.
Yeah, we did,
We
don't
did.
you
That
remember?
was, well, it wasn't,
tedious.
ours was not, we didn't adjourn a joint FinCom meeting, but we were there to answer their questions. as
Yes.
part of their
Right.
And they
meeting.
did the budget.
Yeah, and so what is meant by a joint meeting maybe still has to be
Well, that seems to be
discussed,
okay.
but I wouldn't, personally, I would not be inclined to have that joint meeting until we've had the chance to at least
Exactly.
talk to,
Right,
I don't know about the school, when they'll come through, but
Right.
all the other department heads will be done by the end of February, I would hope.
And I think that worked out really, it did work
It
out
did.
really
Yeah.
well, because we had the answers instead of the year before, I kind of walked out of that
Floundered
joint meeting
around.
thinking, why is everything so great? Like, I don't,
Right.
you know, so I had more questions after that meeting. I think when we have the opportunity to independently ask
Right.
department heads, then we understand, and I think even,
And I do
And I think
agree, because the advantage too with us meeting with department heads in our own meeting, having done this previously the other way, is you really do not get, because you've got not only the Board of Selectmen, but you've got the FinCom, so we all have all these questions we want to ask department heads, and before you know it, the meeting just gets out of hand.
Yeah,
Whereas for us, we're doing it, we're doing our responsibility, which is to pick it apart as best we can, and last year worked out really well. And in the summary meeting that we had with them, although it was tedious, was the way that I think,
it went so smoothly though, I mean, every
As far as
question
having
they
the
had,
questions
we knew
answered.
the answer.
so on the theory that we're gonna do this again,
Yeah.
we scheduled out to the end of this year, which is December 18th is our last meeting for this year. We and deliberately did not do this part because it was early, it was July. Let's agree on a bunch of dates that we think we can adhere to and
go ahead, put it
And that-
together.
well, I'm gonna
Tell-
suggest,
tell me when.
I'm gonna suggest in January, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th.
And those are, what days are those?
Those are Wednesdays.
Oh, perfect.
I won't be
All
there,
right.
so.
You won't be here at all?
Gonna be in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand.
Holy crap, good
You
for
can
you.
Skype.
Wow.
I could Skype.
Oh, you're gonna be there the whole month, I assume you're gonna be gone the whole month of January? Good for you.
Oh, good for you.
That's so
That'll be
cool,
nice.
enjoy.
Yeah, I spent my whole youth trying to avoid that, but
And basically, kind of mapping to last year, how about February 12th, 19th, and 26th?
Works for me.
you're gonna send,
Hang on.
we're gonna get these sent off, right?
So,
Can
yeah,
you just give me the dates again? We're doing
Yeah.
January what?
15, 22, 29,
22, 29, and
February
February
12, 19, and 26.
12, 19.
Will you just match what we did last year, and then
Okay, roughly, yeah.
I don't know why we had a meeting on March 6th last year. We could just do
I
it.
think that might have been the meeting where we actually voted on everything, on the budgets. Like we had all.
But we could do that
the-
anytime in March.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, I think there might have been a lot of people away towards the end of March, whatever it was, we had it in early March.
Did we throw one in because of Hilda?
yeah, I think
Hilda?
so, maybe.
I don't.
well, when it comes
I-
about,
I'd have to go back. I actually have I have all
Oh,
of
it's
the
just-
minutes
yeah,
from
it's
last
just-
year, I think.
so just because you plan them doesn't mean you have to have them. I mean,
This is
you can
true.
take it by meeting, but
Are we
to get the
still leaving
schedule
the
out there.
November 27th meeting the day before
20th, I think
Thanksgiving?
it's the 20th.
How
Okay,
come
because
you
on
always
here
do
it
that?
says the
Right,
27th.
but I have the 20th on my calendar, I'm pretty sure that's the date we actually decided.
Thank you.
Rebecca is nodding in the
So
affirmative.
apparently
Thank
Linda's cooking.
So then, once the schedule's set, obviously, I think that we should send it to the Board of Selectmen and say any one of them are more than welcome to come because it is an open meeting.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
I think Helen's presence was good in that she got a lot of good information from our meetings, and I hope it helped her in terms of budgeting.
How do you feel about March 25th?
I got a date that night.
Oh wait, I'll be playing Scrabble.
I was doing my hair.
It's the last Wednesday in next March.
March 25th,
Yeah.
All I know is last year we got Hilda, 2 years ago we got the house that Mac bought.
Yeah.
the
I
house.
think it-
I have a strong feeling that there are some big 800-pound gorillas out
That's right,
there
that's
right
what I
now
figured, it's like, we're gonna have a fun
that we
with
don't
it.
have real
It's a lot
visibility
of
into yet.
The beach house down by Mayo Beach.
That was a
Rear
good
its head
description, I
again.
love it.
That'd be a good place to sell stickers.
So the 15th, 22nd, 29th of January, the 12th, the 19th, the 26th of February, and March 25th. There's a nice break there.
Yeah,
Does that sound all right?
Ribs.
yeah.
Okay.
Don't
And
make,
then after that, it's
don't
town
laugh.
meeting.
Don't make me laugh.
Don't laugh.
Why not?
Just got from Ripken.
Oh, wow.
Now,
Pick things up and put them
I'm going to briefly turn it over to Dan. We had left, as you may recall, back in July, we said if anybody wants to continue the conversation about Hilta, we would schedule it for September, which we did, and we didn't meet, but it was there. At the time that we were supposed to have our meeting in September, the theory was we would have gone to purchase and sale
Right.
4 days or 5 days earlier than that. That did not happen, correct?
Correct.
So I'm just going to throw it out there in terms of what is the current status, and if anybody wants to have a conversation about it, and if there's actual FinCom business to be done of any kind. My guess is it's still kind of up in the air, but what do you say?
So the purchase and sale closing has been extended to next Monday, which is October 28th. The select board are meeting this coming Friday, and that will be the 3 members who are not recusing themselves, so are eligible to talk about it. They will be meeting in executive session to decide if they are going forward with the closing on the following Monday. We have the survey in. We do not yet have the appraisal in. And that is, I can't say too much because it was all discussed in executive
Who's
session.
preparing it?
The survey,
The appraisal, sorry.
the appraisal, I'm sorry, I get the two confused,
Okay.
yes. It's a company out of Boston, which I did some research and got a couple of recommendations, and then they were supposed to have it to us last week, and they had a family emergency, so it got delayed. I'm expecting it hopefully tomorrow. And that will guide the selectmen on Friday.
So
Art, will you be permitted to pass on the appraisal amount to us?
Yes. Well, as soon as the appraisal, I mean, if the appraisal is supposed to be in any day.
I'd just like to know where it is relevant to the purchase price.
And it is a bang, bang, bang thing, which we're used to with this thing, because tomorrow is Thursday and we don't have the appraisal yet, but the select board are meeting on Friday to discuss the results of the appraisal. And if the closing goes forward, it happens on Monday. So it will be happening very quickly. They will have to make decisions fairly quickly. And once they've made the decisions, if it closes, then everything becomes public information. There's no reason to not release all of the information. If it doesn't close, they'll have to talk to the attorneys and figure out what the steps are. But I think the appraisal and the survey would both be public documents that people can see.
Okay,
Has
so
the purchase price changed?
No,
Okay.
the survey with the acreage discrepancy, is that the survey you're talking about? Is the
Yes.
one with the lesser acreage?
yes.
Okay, so is that reflected also on the appraisal?
The appraiser wouldn't move forward until he had the survey.
Okay, good.
So he took the information from the survey.
Do we have any sense, and
I don't know why they would put it.
I know we've had conversations about process. And I think as much as anything else, a lot of the FinCom objections have been around process. That could have been done differently, right? Maybe with more transparency or whatever. But since there's a relatively, potentially real short period of time between now and when the purchase and sale goes forward, do we have any guidance, and by we, I mean the FinCom, on what the criteria are going to be for the three Board of Select people if they see a significant variance on the appraisal? We already know there's one on the survey.
Acreage.
What if there's a 50% variance? Is there a number that says, well, if it's close by this amount, we go ahead, but if it's not, we don't?
So without really revealing too much of the information that they discussed in executive session, my thought is that if the appraisal comes in above $2 million, which is what the purchase price was agreed to, that would be acceptable.
And
If
it
it
comes in
comes-
significantly lower.
If
Right.
it comes in $1 lower, I don't think they would go for it.
Okay. Good to know.
Okay.
Well, the chances are it could come in way above, and then the town will know whether or not they're getting a good deal.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's what that's.
The
whole
question
deal.
I have is, who at town council told you not to put the request for an appraisal as contingency?
Town council did not tell me that.
Okay, but that was in the newspaper
No,
the
but
other
what
day.
happened on that situation is the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board gave, I believe there were 4 contingencies.
Okay,
The appraisal was not one of them.
okay,
Only the survey was. But a Select Board member, or even 2, didn't remember that,
okay.
and they said, oh, we're gonna have an appraisal done. Well, it was never part of the contingencies.
It was supposed to be a
Right, but Dan,
survey.
what I wanna know is who at Koppelman and Page told you that you didn't have to have
No
a
one told me
contingency?
that.
Okay, so the article that I read in the Provincetown Independent where you said that Koppelman and Page said that you didn't have to have a contingency for an appraisal in
No.
there?
They said, for this purchase, you do not have to have an appraisal. Did they tell me not to ask for one? No, they did not. But it was not required by law that we have an appraisal on it.
Okay. And who was that individual?
It probably would have been Carolyn Murray, who is our lead attorney there.
Okay.
Can I add?
And just to give you a little bit of an explanation there, you know, sometimes when you're buying
Mhm.
purchasing something, you have to go through procurement.
Yeah,
But if you don't go through procurement, you identify it as a unique parcel of land.
okay,
So it's not like we wanna purchase 100 acres of shellfish property in the harbor.
right,
This was a unique parcel of land that we were looking to purchase. So when you're looking at a unique parcel of land, the appraisal does not become a requirement when you're going through procurement.
okay,
Because the appraisal isn't gonna, if it's that unique,
Right.
there's not gonna be any comparable things to
Yeah,
appraisal
some-
to,
The
so,
people that are in purchase
so it's not.
parcels.
Yeah, that makes
Yes.
sense.
What happens to those?
They continue to own the parcels that they
Yeah,
purchased.
now I get it.
So that was part of the agreement since day one,
Well-
since it was approved at town meeting. Because they,
This seems like it's gonna be a problem down.
That, I,
What?
but the trust can't sell the town property that it no longer owns. So
They
the-
think by
If they
eminent
don't
domain
have
though.
clear time.
if the town wants to do that at some point, that would be their decision.
there's gonna,
Oh, right,
yeah,
right, right.
that's gonna be,
So-
that's gonna be something that.
Yeah.
From a FinCom perspective,
Well, we have no, I mean,
oh, I know, and I guess
no clout.
all we can really say is, if the appraisal comes in over the purchase price, we would generically be okay with that, I
I
guess.
think so.
And if, look, I mean, I'm not a fisherman, I'm first to say that, at least not, except for that kind. Does anybody have any other thoughts from a FinCom perspective of any position we would want to take on this in terms, I mean, we can certainly advise in the future in terms of process.
Well, the vote to purchase has already been
Yeah, I-
done. So
Yeah.
it's- We're
But
not
I-
gonna have any input on this at all.
What I'd like to see, maybe if you would be interested in doing this at some point, is from a process point of view, how should this have been done differently in the future? As, even if you just send a recommendation to the select board, and the concept of, you know, an appraisal should be done prior to your agreeing to purchase something,
Yeah.
maybe that needs to be a policy of the town.
And I can understand why they would advise that not be a, I
Right.
don't know if you heard me, I whispered it to Stephen, but I understand because with
There's
the
no
unique property, there's no comparable
comps
to
to
look
get.
at it. So the
Yeah.
appraisal isn't necessarily, something, but it's nice to, it's a good figure to have, but it's,
And
it's,
it's-
again, it's.
and again,
it's a
not being
couple
an
of
expert, but I would say yes
speculation
and.
on it, so.
If you represent the property as having, say, 200 acres based on one set of criteria, and a survey comes in and says, no, it really has 150 acres based on a different set of criteria, but you're charging based on a price per acre, then it becomes
Yeah.
comparable in some ways.
But it doesn't, but there's no, who else, what other town has done this, that's what it is.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's
So
a unique
just a-
situation.
yeah,
We're
it's a
probably
unique-
never going to experience it
Again,
again.
yeah.
And it's unfortunate that some people got bent out of shape because there were so many moving targets. How would you have done it better? I don't know. I
Well,
mean,
there
how
should
would
be a
you
law
know?
in Massachusetts saying when you land court something, the stuff that's severed at the high water line automatically goes to the town that it resides in.
Yeah, but you're asking for a
Nebulous thing.
law.
And having a bunch of people that have, yeah, I understand
Except that high water line is moving, that revetment tells
exactly.
us that for sure.
It's changing.
Property.
It's land courted.
All right,
So overall,
I
it's,
would be, I would just say, going forward, that from a FinCom perspective on this land is that, and I don't really understand this not being a fisher person, but the way that the town rents the property or gives it, or grants the property or something like that. I don't know from a fee, from a revenue stream and kind of thing, if that is something that should be in our purview at some point. And I don't.
State law.
Okay.
The situation for Hilda is so unique, that'll never
Yes,
happen.
exactly.
anything else
We'll
like that
never
again.
have a
That's not the
situation.
issue though, because when you talk about process, what the issue is, are these 11th-hour surprises of huge, big ticket items that nobody's had a chance to really go
Thank you.
through. That is what the issue
That properly,
is.
yeah.
and it shows a lack
It's not
of.
gonna be Hilda, I mean,
Yeah, it's not, no, yeah, it's,
The lack of planning on the select board's
Yeah,
point of
and
view.
it's happened now twice in a row,
Yeah.
and so we're, you know, really, as I said, I'm expecting another, you know, March surprise or whatever.
Well, and to that point, I mean, we've talked about a sewer potentially, we've talked about the dredging, we've talked about the possibility of, well, I mean,
Strategic.
the high school cost
Yeah.
went from an estimate of 50 million last year to 150 million this year. These things do tend to pop up at the last second, and then you're asked to make decisions based on, are they reasonable? I mean, to your point, Stephen, I think there was a general sense, the 2 million or a million, it's actually gonna cost the town, that sounds okay, you know? But $1 million here and $1 million there, suddenly it's a lot of money, and
So-
how do we as a financial advisory board
Maybe they should
get
get the
even good
threshold
advice if we don't
number.
understand the problem?
If the town's gonna make an investment above some number, and, you know, that's significant, there should be a process for that, or some way to review that better than, I don't know.
I think
But it just seems to me that there should be like some number when something goes on, or maybe it's even an after the fact, and maybe it's a FinCom thing, that we go back after the fact and we can report back to town meeting, what happened with those big, huge ticket items and that, you know, got rammed in at the end. I don't know if that makes sense, or if that's us doing our,
Well, I think,
you know, our service to the town, to be able to come back and say, you know, we had these big issues, and now, you know, it's like what do they call it, like in a doctor, when somebody dies, it's like a D&D or whatever.
Post-mortem?
Yeah, but it's like after somebody died, yeah, I don't know what it is.
Post-mortem.
But something like that on some of these, looking at, Hilda is, I don't think you can find 10 people in town that could explain what Hilda is.
well, but.
I think we got a general idea of what's going on, and again, this is an incredibly unique situation, it's probably never gonna happen.
But that's what I'm saying, it's just us
Again.
going back and sort of saying, here are these things, and maybe, how did we do last year? Maybe that's it.
So to that point, and again, I'm gonna juxtapose two things on the agenda. The whole strategic planning thing, there's nothing much to talk about it at this point, except that it's in process. But part of the justification for it is
Well, it
to
ties-
have these postmortems and also to look ahead.
It ties back to the same, but it's exactly the same
Right.
thing as the strategic.
To whatever degree we have the ability to take responsibility for advising on future costs and saying, you need to take some time, you need to vet this, you need to think about it, you need to get your ducks in order before you spend the money. That's one way to do it, is to identify these costs far enough in advance. And also say, look, if you're being pressured to spend the money, maybe you shouldn't, you know?
True.
Between the school, the dredging, and the sewer, I mean, we're looking at, I don't know, are we doubling our tax bill? I don't know what it is, but those are like three
Yeah.
huge
It's gonna be
numbers.
big.
And I don't even know what it is that we've omitted, it's probably something else.
I think
I
it was
think
a
you
good-
got them all for now.
well, I think you did it, like, last year when we changed the way that we went into the joint
Select board
session.
meeting,
I think it was good because like you said, that, you know, if you are a person coming to town meeting and, you know, your interest in it is, you know, 2 or 3 nights a year, and you hear, oh, look, we're getting a van. I think we did a really good job last year as a committee to say it isn't just a van, because there are expenses that go
Right.
along with that. There's somebody who's gonna drive it, and there's liability, and there's this. So I think,
Insurance
you
and
know,
maintenance.
as
Yeah.
just as a board, it's important not to say yes or no, but, and I think with Hilda, we didn't have a chance to do
We
it.
had no, we
Again, it
had no
came so quickly and
information.
came so.
And I thought it was
But-
a good thing that we didn't take a position going into town meeting. I
Because
thought that was
there
exactly the right thing not to do.
do.
Exactly. No,
Because
Put
there
it
was-
that way,
Yeah.
because we didn't understand what it was
What it
about.
was, yeah.
And we could have influenced the vote one way or the
Yeah,
other,
no, I
and it
think
would
it
have
was
been
the
wrong
right
to
thing
do
to
it
do.
one way or the other, because we wouldn't have known what we're
Because
talking about.
personally, you
Because-
know, I'm thinking it's great, you know, and I think it's great that Helen Miranda Wilson stepped up to the plate.
Yeah.
But it's after the fact, you know, I mean,
Yeah, it was.
So- I'm gonna table the more on the strategic plan for now.
the one thing I'd like to point out is we do now have a town planner. I guess the assistant administrator is, so this is just another indication, and I'm sure that now the select board may have some direction when it comes to town planning.
Would it be worth having that person come in for one of our meetings and
Introducing himself.
introducing
Yes.
himself and kind of talk
Right.
about their process.
Then we could dovetail into our strategic planning as well, because.
Maybe for the December meeting where we're not going to have an awful lot of the budget to review.
That sounds good.
Sounds great.
Give them a chance to come up with a plan.
Can you bring Nilla wafers the next time?
I can actually. I can. I absolutely can.
If I find out where my kitchen is, I might bake.
Ooh.
I think this is a tradition that should endure long after I'm chair, that there should be snacks.
Pizza
available.
would work for me.
Pizza would be fine too. So finally,
This is too greasy for me.
liaison reports. I was going to talk last time about the school. All the material is there. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at it. There's nothing to be said. It's going to be going to town meeting next year. But and there's all kinds of displays around, but the net of it is that last year, the spitball estimate was around 50 million, but that was not based on anything real. And now it's about 140 million.
This
It's
is the
only
high,
gonna keep
the high
going
school,
up.
right?
It is perfectly reasonable to look at the assumptions behind the money and how that money is going to be offset by the state, and ask some serious questions about those assumptions, because if you look through their charts and see what they're expecting the state to pay for, and at what rate, it's based on, I think, the most optimistic estimate of what the state would likely come up with, which is a lesson to take through other things like dredging. Because all of these big expenses assume the state will reimburse at a rate. And the rate tends to be somewhere between 35, 36%, and 40%. And my understanding is that we are in the process of cultivating a new person who would be our advocate at the state level, because the person who was there before left. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to be looking favorably at Wellfleet. It just means that these are fungible things. You know, the state's perspective on the well-being of this town and how much they're willing to pony up for it across a variety of areas, like dredging, like schools, like sewers, like whatever.
Right.
You know, it changes from year to year. It changes with administrations. It changes with the political winds. And we should never assume we're going to get. There should always be some variance in what we assume we're going to get from a low to a high.
And part of the strategic planning that we should look into, I mean, right now Truro and Provincetown are still voucher, right? They're not part
There's
of the.
talk of
Nauset
them
region.
joining the region.
Okay.
They have a tuition agreement
Tuition agreement.
with
okay.
both towns.
Yeah.
We had a meeting with Tom Conrad, the superintendent of schools, last week. And so this coming April, they will ask all 4 towns for a town meeting vote. It has to be unanimous, or it has to be, all 4 towns have to vote to
To
approve it.
include the two,
And then there would be a town election vote in all 4 towns, and that is a majority of voters.
Sure.
So Wellfleet could vote no on it, but if the majority of people outweigh it in the other 3 towns, it goes forward then.
And that's to include Truro and Provincetown as part of the Nauset Regional.
So they
School
are
district?
not in that discussion yet, they're still in a tuition agreement.
Isn't
Okay.
there there's
No,
a
this
deadline
is
on
to
that, isn't there?
pass
Wasn't that
the
for-
capital plan.
Oh, the capital.
It's
plan.
it's almost identical to what happened with
Right.
the tech high school.
Kathy, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
The tuition plan for them, wasn't there an end date to that? Wasn't that a specific
I
time
think
period?
it's every 3 years,
Okay, and then it
and
has to
they
be.
talked about it a little bit
And
because
then they renegotiate it, and
Yeah.
there's no reason why they would join.
Why
Nauset
would, yeah, there's no
Right,
reason,
because
there's
it's
no
much
incentive
cheaper
for
for
them
them.
to.
Cheaper for them in
but
the
it's,
long
it's, there's incentive for the other 4 towns to,
To have
to
them.
bring them on
bring them
board. So
Can we
my
not,
question would be is we need maybe, because
pressure them?
everything we see is that we're having diminishing children coming into the high schools. I'd like to find out how we can withdraw from the Nauset Region High School district
I don't
and then
think
go
we
to
can.
tuition. Well, you know, people say that. There should be a process.
Talk to
It's not like there's
Talk to
another
Dennis and
option.
Yarmouth.
So,
Dennis and
I
Yarmouth?
think, yeah, so
Okay.
what,
Like, what's your option, man?
Yeah, what are your options?
No, I mean, what is your option? There isn't another high school in the center of
There's
the Cape.
tuition, just like what
tuition,
Truro and
so you're,
Provincetown
yeah,
did.
so you're, I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
I don't
And then you get a
know.
voucher, you can go to the Cape Cod Tech if you
Well,
want.
you can still do that,
Yeah,
but has anybody ever heard of a town leaving a school district?
Well, I said Dennis and Yarmouth have been fighting
Yeah,
that
they've-
out
they've been doing that
for
for a
about a
while.
year now. Yeah. It looks like you can't. Yeah.
I mean, unless you.
there's gotta be a
form
I think the
process.
principal, I think it's the I think you're speaking to the principal, as if we have these, these two towns
Right.
that
Yeah.
are doing this and going to tuition and they opt out of coming on board, why
Yeah.
can't we opt
Yeah.
in to going to?
Well, there should be something like if it's, like if a majority of the students from a town are attending a
Interesting.
school, then
Interesting.
then that would be a requirement that they have to join the
That's an
school
interesting
district.
concept.
There is,
which
I
would be
mean,
Brewster's if
and they
have
would
the
have, and
population.
I would venture that the majority of students are attending Nauset because that's the closest option.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's also a
Tech,
good school.
or Tech.
And it's also.
There's also
I don't
Monomoy.
understand why with the closing of the Provincetown High School, they are not forced to join the district.
Because the town has to vote to become part of it, and nobody should be forced to do anything like that, because look what you got.
Yeah, but
What
that's,
we're
yeah.
experiencing right now.
Well, but that's an expense that towns have to face anyway periodically, is rebuilding or
Right.
I
refurbishing.
guess,
So I'm gonna
I guess
find
I would
out.
say, since the
I'll look
predicate,
into it.
the predicate for that comment was in part a decreasing school population. So
Yeah.
if you talk to Tom Conrad about the long-term prospects,
Yeah.
because I mean, this renovation is being done against future expectations of the need for a school,
Right.
right? And so
Like the school one.
Yeah.
the next obvious question is, how many students are there
They're
going
gonna
to
be,
be
to go to
in
the
20,
school.
30 years?
Exactly.
And the overall demographics for this Cape are younger people leaving, fewer younger people going to school and so on, but not like falling off a cliff, fewer, kind of more like that. And there are, I think, open discussions about could the school be used for other purposes like senior or adult education and that kind of thing. These are all sort of future questions though.
Having adults, if there's extra chairs in a classroom that could actually, you go back to high school. I
Go
don't
back.
see that.
So moving on,
Okay, moving
I
on.
have
If I could just add one
Please.
thing, Tom Conrad has offered at any time if you want him to come and talk to the finance committee, he's more than welcome to do that.
oh yeah,
He's more than happy to do that if you want.
and I'm 100% confident you will know.
This is all the schools.
I got 3 quickies on the way.
Yeah, one thing, you had asked for a liaison planning guideline.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you got it. or
Yeah,
not.
I used it, yeah.
You did, okay.
Well, so I've done, so there's only, the biggest item that is an uncertainty in the police department is apparently animal control. That the way that it's been done in the past is not working, and that could be a significant, not like getting cruiser, but it could be, animal control is the one uncertainty that seems to
Are we
be.
talking about stray dogs or coyotes and rats?
Yes.
Anything.
We're talking,
Everything.
Somebody to be, the problem is that
We
they
don't
have no
have-
place to put an animal,
Yeah,
and so,
I
so
thought they had that little area.
whatever it is, what they currently have isn't working, I'm just saying that's something that they anticipate. As far as the energy committee, I got 2 things to report. They've started the construction, everything is
I
great,
saw
except
that.
apparently that the town does not hold their title to the land of the, and so we're able to keep that.
how could
Eversource,
that happen?
Eversource won't put in the poles to go there, so we can generate electricity, we just can't pull it out, that's number 1.
Oops.
I'm assuming that's
Why
gonna,
are we not?
I'm assuming
Just
that's something will
Just
have to
the
do.
title search thing?
It just has to be filed with land court and that takes
Right.
like about 2 months to happen.
Yeah,
So.
but it is a great
But it
story.
had never been done in the past, so.
And second, the good news is that when we finally do hook up, we're anticipating about 60,000, which turns out to be about, I think, 1/3 of what our overall electricity
Nice.
usage is.
Good.
60,000 kilowatt hours?
$67,000 that will,
Oh,
that the town will
Generate.
generate, I think,
So,
out of a
it's
total
about
cost.
a
About
third.
1/3, I think, is what we're looking at.
Nice.
Yeah.
Those are mine, that's it, I've liaison for,
I don't have
I will,
anything.
anyone else?
the library, just went over their budget with Dan this past Monday, and I haven't had a chance to discuss it with her yet, but I will get to that for the next meeting.
Okay.
And the Affordable Housing Committee is interesting, and I will also try to have that for the next meeting. But it, you know, that's just a whole different kettle of fish.
I just put stuff out on their website yesterday for the property in South Wafley. Was it Ridge? Whatever road it is.
So at the next meeting, obviously, we'll go over the capital improvement recommendations or whatever and formalize those. We're talking about having the town planner in December, not in November, correct? Does anybody have any major items or issues they want to have on the agenda at the next meeting that you can think of right now? And I'm going to entertain a
I
motion.
move we adjourn.
A second.
All those in favor of adjourning?
Celtics start tonight.
Thank you.